Hi, welcome to Wednesday Wisdom. My name is Sera Doğramacı, and I'm Ice Hockey Australia's Goaltender Development Manager. And today with me, I have Dave Hutchison, who is the founder of InGoal magazine. Hello, Hutch.
Hello, thank you. And you got the right name too. Well done.
Oh, excellent. I'm so excited for this. I have 1,000 questions, but we are going to try and cut them down to a few. Starting off with your hockey background. So, at
Uh,
what age, how you got involved, all the details.
uh-oh, you're in trouble here. This could be the whole half hour. Well, as best I remember, because it was about 50 years ago, I started playing. And the short answer is my understanding is I played forward first. And I tended to sort of stop along the boards and talk to people in the stands. I don't think they even had glass in those days. I was more interested in the chit chat. So the coach phoned my mother one day and said, do you think David might be interested in trying to be a goalie? And I looked up at her with these big eyes. She tells me the story many times and said, "Oh, mommy, it's what I've wanted my whole life." And so that started it. And it was actually round about the time Montreal-Chicago played in the Stanley Cup final, Ken Dryden's first season. And he stole the show that year and stole my heart as a goalie. So he was sort of my hero growing up. And my parents held him up to me as a hero because he also was a lawyer and a law student at the time. He was in the NHL. And so, a great example of mixing academics and sport. And
Yeah.
so that got me started. Nothing fancy beyond that. You won't find me in hockey DB or anything. I played minor hockey in and around Toronto, and had a very, very tiny cup of coffee in university hockey at McGill University. Same time Mike Babcock was a player there, but I was very firmly number 4 on the depth chart. And ahead of me was a guy who'd just come from the Washington Capitals camp, a guy who just finished a 4-year career in the Quebec Major Junior League, and a guy, John Elkin, who turned out to be an NHL goalie coach. And so he was my partner briefly with the team we were on there at McGill together. And it turned out to be the last year for both of us playing. So competitively, that is. Yeah.
But you had a fun career though, right?
Oh, you know what? It was great fun. And I was that guy who knew he wasn't, blessed with a ton of talent or anything. So I just loved reading about everything I could to become a better goaltender and in other sports as well. So that sort of led me down the path to sports science in university as well. So yeah, and it was all fantastic and thrilled that I'm able to still be involved in it.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, before we touch back on the university, still playing now?
You know what? I haven't played this year. I played a few times last year and played quite regularly up until last year. And we hit a point where the combination of InGoal sort of taking off in terms of busyness and my son hitting a very competitive level of hockey with a lot of travel meant I just didn't know that I could commit. And you know what it's like when you're the goalie, if you have to phone and say, "Sorry, I'm not coming today."
You got to find a backup plan.
Doesn't go, and it just, so I just shut her down to play a little bit more casually, but obviously that's been interrupted this year for everybody, really.
Yeah. What is well, with where you are, is hockey back?
So it really depends. We're in British Columbia, the west coast of Canada, and some regions have just recently been shut down from playing games, although they can still practice in a sort of socially distant way. Our region is still able to play, but we've only got one team at our level we can play right now. I say we, my son, but I'm the goalie coach. And so I'm thankful we're on the ice, but I know there's lots of people in Canada who aren't right now and around the world. So we're counting our blessings for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully next year things return to somewhat normal, and we'll
isn't that
see.
the truth?
Yeah. Okay, university. So studied exercise science.
Yeah, I mean, many years of university, but short answer is a master's degree in exercise science from the University of Toronto, and a couple of years towards a PhD, which I was doing at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, working with U.S. swimming of all places. Although I'm not a swimmer, I sink. But just a fascinating group to study.
Just melted ice, right? That's all.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and you know what? I'd actually taken some time off of hockey after I stopped at McGill, and wasn't playing up to that point. And Dallas Stars came through town in Colorado Springs, where I was, and did a practice there. And I remember stopping by the rink, and to me, it was pretty strange that you could just walk into an NHL practice, but you sure could at that time. And that's sort of, I sort of credit that moment as rekindling the fire to get back in it. And yeah.
Right. Okay, so I know you had mentioned to me before that you had considered coming to Australia to do a PhD.
True story. Yeah, well done. I bumped into somebody, and I'm so old now that I can't remember who it was, but a professor had given a speech on doing some research in disabled athletes, I believe it was.
Okay.
It was definitely in Sydney, and we exchanged many notes and sort of got to the point of I was about to take the plunge when the opportunity in Colorado came up, and sort of a dream place to study uh,
Yeah. No,
exercise
it's fair enough.
physiology, right? Yeah,
Well, hopefully you'll come to Australia for a holiday at some point when you're allowed
that
to
would be
travel and
great.
when we accept people in.
Yeah, no
Okay,
kidding.
so then with your university studies and your degree, what did you end up going to do?
None of that teaching. So yeah, my whole life as I've been doing things, people have been sort of telling me you should be a teacher. You should be a teacher for whatever reason. I know I drove my goalie partners crazy every time I came back from a camp or a clinic. I would tell them everything we'd been doing wrong and insisted they listen to me. So maybe I was born to be a teacher. I don't know, but I'd been enjoying that side of grad school far more than the research side.
Okay,
Um, and so it just sort of seemed like the right calling. So I did that for it probably about 18 years of teaching and school administration
nice.
before we got to the point where this little hobby called InGoal got out of control, and we had to make a break and see how it would go.
Well, let's talk about that. How did the
Yeah.
whole in-goal idea come about? So you're a founder.
Hmm.
What what was the vision for it, and what do you specifically do?
Yeah, well, the vision was not much. It was quite honestly, I was working at a boarding school. I was running a boarding house, and I was teaching computer science because that's how I'd paid my way through university, was programming, self-taught.
Nice.
But at the time, you could sort of get away with that. And I was teaching computer science, and all the kids in my house would come home at night, the ones taking this entrepreneurship class, and they would tell me about how their teacher was teaching them about making money on the internet. And I wasn't looking to try and make money on the internet, but I found it kind of awkward that I didn't even know what they were talking about. And here I am, the computer teacher. So I better figure out what's going on. This was sort of the beginning of blogging and things. So I tried a few things, just something to do at night, sitting on the couch. And those things had nothing to do with hockey because I made the assumption that it would be a saturated market already. And I
Yeah.
would be jumping in, to share my thoughts when they wasn't really needed. And frankly, I was a little scared too, a little scared of, went onto a few forums and things. And of course, there would just be these incendiary conversations about how goalie X held his glove versus goalie Y. And I'm not sure I wanted to jump into that. The things I was doing didn't really go anywhere, but I learned a ton. And I
Hmm.
realized they're not going anywhere because they're not my passion. And I was just sort of looking for things to do. I better say, I looked a little more, and all of a sudden I discovered actually, no, there isn't much going on in the goaltending world online. There was a few bulletin boards and things, but not much else. And so I decided to put this little site together. And it was actually modeled after a rowing site because rowing was a sport I coached as well. And
Oh, there you
jack of all
go.
trades, master of none. And at 5'8", I'm as qualified to be a rower as I am a goaltender.
Oh,
Um, but but there was a site that just sort of aggregated the news every day, and I lived there as a rowing coach. So I thought, oh, I'll do something like that for goaltenders. And long story short, it all led to this moment about a year and a half later when my current partner, Kevin Woodley, picked up the phone and called me, and he said, and he was at the Vancouver Olympics covering them for
mhm.
the Associated Press. And he said to me, you're doing what I've always wanted to do, but I don't really know how. Kevin's not the techie guy. Um, but I'm in the locker room and you're not. Is there some way we can do something together? And it's just something went off. It was about a 5-second conversation. I said, great, 50-50, let's go.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so that started it. And the fun story was that he would feed me things during the Olympics that he knew goaltenders would be interested in, but the mainstream media wouldn't really
Yep.
connect with at all.
Yeah.
And one of the stories was in one of the games, Canada was playing Slovakia, and Roberto Luongo made this save off of the late Pavel Dimitra that effectively saved the Olympics for Canada. If that puck goes in, Canada's done, and there's no gold medal. What was neat about it that Kevin had unearthed was that shortly before the Olympics, Lou was always using a one-piece cuff on his catching glove, and he had gotten his new one-piece glove for the Olympics, and 2 or 3 weeks out, he heard that there's this rule in international hockey that the goalie glove has to have a 2-piece cuff on it. I didn't know it either, and I don't even know if it's true still. But it turned out when he switched to the 2-piece cuff, Reebok's model with a 2-piece cuff had a cheater, if you will. We hate that name, but I don't know what else we call it. That actually had a slightly different profile to it and rounded up a little bit versus the 1-piece cuff where it sort of scooped down a little bit. That was the spot that stopped the puck that Pavel Demitra shot. So had he not been forced to change gloves, Canada probably doesn't win a gold medal, is the story. And true or not, it's a lot of fun. So that was the first one, and there were others about how American teammates were targeting Brodeur because they knew what his vulnerable spots are, so to speak, and a few other things like that. But yeah, that was sort of the beginning, and we've wandered along for 10 years or so since to where we are now.
And I think you've wandered along well. It sounds like there's been lots of adventures on the way. I mean, I subscribe and I listen to the podcast, and I'm still filtering my way through articles. And if there's something that I'm specifically looking for, you guys are my go-to.
Thank you.
So how has it all developed? How's that journey been?
At first it really was just put stuff up and see what happens. We were very fortunate to get connected with our current podcast sponsor right from day one, and they've been fantastic, the Hockey Shop in British Columbia. And they connected us with a few of the companies, and so that sort of opened up some of those relationships, and took a trip down to Vegas for hockey, the Let's Play Hockey show, and got to meet some of the folks from Reebok at the time, especially. And but yeah, it's just been 10 years of networking and figuring out what's next, trying different opportunities. We tried to do sort of an online magazine format that looked like a real magazine. It was a PDF flip book, and we had quite a few of those, but it was just a ton of work, and Kevin was full-time and I was full-time already, and so they'd get done at 3:00 in the morning. I literally uploaded one Christmas Eve at 2:00 in the morning.
I did enjoy those, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, they were great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the timing was wrong, and it was a good project, and we learned a lot, but we always had this vision that we could do something like that was more web-based, and have been knocking around the idea of a subscription site probably for 5 years. And we've seen some other places do it successfully, and we thought, well, we're sitting on so much content. We'd go to all these different things and hang out with all these different goaltenders and coaches, and needed a place to use it and needed a way to share it. We wanted to share it. So last year, round about this time, maybe a month earlier than this, we just decided it was time to jump in with both feet and make a commitment, and we did.
Nice. Well, I think it's turned out. So this has become full-time for you now, right? Like not teaching anymore or anything like that, or?
Yeah, certainly not getting rich on InGoal, but hockey-related things in InGoal are getting to the point where we're not going to lose the house or anything. But yeah, no, I've got an amazing wife who was actually pushing me to take the plunge and see how it goes. And to the point of saying, like, honestly, if we need to sell the house and go smaller, we'll do that. We just want you to chase your dreams. So we haven't had to sell the house yet.
Yeah, you got to enjoy what you do. It sounds like it. Okay, so with the podcast and the the amazing interviews you've had, and I'm sure there's a lot you could talk about. Highlight moments, or what's been, this has been so awesome chatting to you, or anything like that. Anything you can share with us? What's been so cool for you?
Well, we'll start with our partner in the podcast, Darren Millard. And I got connected to Darren because he actually went to an Eli Wilson goaltending camp. And at the time, I was helping Eli with a bit of his marketing and photography and stuff. And so I got connected to Darren there, and I phoned him one day and I just said, we've been thinking about doing this, but we really don't know what we're doing. And you're incredible. And I know you're a goalie. What do you think? And we had many conversations. I remember standing, watching my son play baseball as I was yapping away with Darren in the outfield. On the phone, and he said to me, my wife says I'm not going to make any money at this. And I thought, oh geez, well, he is a professional, I understand, fair enough, but she told me I have to do it anyway. And because again, it's a passion for him as well, and I think for the three of us, that moment each week when we come together to chit chat and talk
Yeah.
goaltending is really a highlight. So without Darren, we're not even there. And without Kevin and his connections to the goaltenders, we're not there either. So thankful for both my partners.
Mm.
But other than that moment with Darren, oh gosh, there's so many. I would say from a podcast perspective, since you asked, Glenn Hall, the opportunity to visit him in his home in just outside of Edmonton. I brought a case of Busch beer because he said that's his favorite beer, or actually his son told me that was his favorite beer. And so I arrived with this for him. Sorry, podcast guests, we don't normally deliver beer to everybody, but if you invite me to your
That's not
home,
going to be the
I would bring
expectation
some.
now, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, invite me and I'll bring it. And so I put it down on and offered it to him, put it down, and we're all sitting around together in the living room. And I have my son with me as well, who was 12 at the time, I think, and is a goaltender. And Glenn just stared at all this beer, and finally he just said, "Well, guys, are we just going to stare at them, or are we going to drink them?" And that was the beginning of just a warm and wonderful conversation with him. He's a great person. Felt so comfortable chatting and drinking beer with a Hall of Famer, one of the top goaltenders ever.
Yeah.
And he had so many funny stories. He was telling us about gear, and of course I whined about how bad the gear was when I played, and imagine what he had it like. And he said that he would wrap bubble wrap around his arms when bubble wrap came out, to sort of add a little layer of cushioning. I thought, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Plus, it gives the defenseman something to do between periods, he said.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, so that was really a highlight. And so many more. Devin McConnell, we talked about earlier when we were offline there, just because of my background, was a fabulous conversation. Head of sports science now for, probably have the wrong title, for Arizona Coyotes, just appointed there,
Yeah.
and a goaltender. It wasn't really podcast related, but the first time we met Carey Price, which has now happened several times, but he was just coming off the Hart Trophy and the Vezina, and I'm significantly older than him, but I was starstruck for a while. I got to admit. Now it's funny. We see him after a year, and he remembers the last conversation and how you doing, guys, and
Oh,
yeah, just a great
nice.
person. So and I guess the last one would just be the opportunities that I've seen my son have as a result of all of this, because there've been many times it's gotten a little too hard and a little too late at night, and I wanted to drop it. And I think of the opportunities he's had as a result, both from a training perspective and meeting some of his heroes. And one of those was he actually sat down and did an interview with Carey for us. We did a series we called Questions from Kids, and
Yeah.
he got to speak to Carey and James Reimer and Connor Hellebuck and a few other guys. And Carey was so wonderful with him. He was super nervous, as you can imagine. I think he was 10 at the time, maybe even 9. And he was just fumbling with his questions, and Carey just looked at him and he said, "Don't worry about it. We got all day." And
Oh,
oh wow, yeah, what a fantastic guy. So seeing those things happen, obviously, as a parent, we live for our kids, so it's great.
absolutely. Okay, so you had mentioned that you're the goalie coach for your son and with the
Hmm.
team. So with all the interviews and people that you've met along the way and all the information that you get, do you then use that to
Oh,
help your son?
100%. Yeah. Actually, sorry, if we just backtrack, because I started goalie coaching way back in the 90s when I was in grad school. And here's a
Yeah,
fun
okay.
story for you, since we're doing stories. I volunteered to coach at my old high school. I'd played in a high school program in Toronto. And I walked into the dressing room the first day I'm going to do any goaltending coaching in my life, aside from all those partners I annoyed growing up. And I hear one of the kids in the dressing room shout across the room, "Hey, Dryden, pass the tape." And immediately my heart was both excited and terrified, because I thought, oh my gosh, do I have to coach his kid? And it was Ken Dryden's son. And thank heavens he wasn't a goaltender, because it would have been terrifying to have your work evaluated every night.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, and so I got to meet him as a result of that, and that was pretty cool.
Oh,
Um,
that's
Very
awesome.
much pre-InGoal. Still waiting to get him on the podcast. If anybody knows how to get Ken, let me know. I know he doesn't love to talk
I
hockey too
can't
much
help
on
you.
these
I'm
things.
sorry.
Yeah, he's the one get I'd love to have. No, so absolutely. I see myself as I definitely take a coaching role with him, but I'm also sort of see myself more as the general manager of the program, if you will, because
Yeah, right.
I'm so fortunate that there's so many people that I've been able to connect Matthew with for coaching, and so he's learned from a lot of great coaches as a result of some of the time we've been going around, and too many to mention. Um, and I've learned a lot when I'm on the ice with these guys. I think I do have a little advantage as a coach because so many goalie coaches are so busy with the work that they're doing that they're doing their work, and I'm more of a generalist because I'm going around meeting all sorts of people, and I've seen it taught in so many different ways and learned so many opinions and so on from talking to people. So I'm able to put some of that into practice. Now I'm not at the level of any of these guys. I don't pretend to be, although I think I'm a pretty good teacher. But yeah, I think it's benefited my son, and I know when I can help him, and I know when it's time to step back and have somebody else help him as well. And now we're more collaborating because he's way beyond any level I ever reached, and has learned so much already.
But I think your teaching background would certainly help with the coaching as well.
Oh, I think it does for sure. And there's other coaches. I mean, you mentioned you're going to be talking to Dave Alexander, right? Who was a teacher, a fabulous one every time I've seen him speak, and others. But yeah, it's so important to be able to communicate, to be able to understand the individual, to be able to put things in different ways, to not always have one way of working with a student. And I find things just sort of pop out of nowhere based on that classroom time, I think. And yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, and I also think this kind of touches on another point where I encourage goalies and even players to not just follow the one coach. You know, it's okay to then look for another coach. And I mean, it's the same thing, right? There's so many different techniques and styles and whatnot, and ways to do something. So grab information from all different sources and then do what works for you, and then create your own style in a way. So
Couldn't agree more. And actually did an article. I do some of the parent articles at InGoal. Haven't done one in a while, but I did one on exactly that, being open to working with more than one coach. Both for all the reasons you said, that you will experience so much more and learn so much more, but you're also going to have to work with other coaches as you move on, and you better be ready to work with them, because if you sort of shut down and don't want to work with these guys, you're limiting yourself very quickly. So from both
100%.
perspectives, I think it's incredibly important. And every student I work with, I tell them, you have to have an open mind, and I'm going to suggest some things for you, and give them a go. They might work for you. They might not work for you. I strongly
But you've got to
suggest you try
try
them
it.
in practice.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
if you throw it out on game day, then that's okay. There's always a few things that are, basics that everybody really needs to do, but I'm
The
never going
fundamentals
to
are
get
the
in.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm not going to get into an argument with somebody about exactly how he holds his glove, or whatever it might be, right? There's always individual differences on tactical decisions and so on. But yeah.
absolutely. Excellent. Okay, so what does the future hold for InGoal? What's coming up next? I know 100th episode is creeping up.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. 100th episode for the podcast will come round about the last day of the year.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
coincidentally, happened to look at the calendar, and we're hoping we can put something fun together for that last episode. Not last, well, last of the year, for the 100th, to celebrate it. We are very close to celebrating the first anniversary of launching the subscription site. We call it InGoal Premium. That will be December 12th, I think, is when we first sort of told the world that
Yeah,
it was
okay.
there. Yeah. So we're super excited about that. And really at this point, it's just sort of an evolutionary process. Can we add a little bit here? Can we add a little bit there? The gear segments have gone video on the podcast. So that's a learning curve for us as well. And how can we add there? Some of the interviews, the next one coming out actually tomorrow, Elvis Merzlikins, was done on video. And so we produced that already. So subscribers can get a little bonus
I'll just make
to
a note of
those.
that.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. Really, really great interview. So yeah, I think it'll be more of the same. There's no fantastic program just waiting to come out, but we're always talking and always listening. And having said that, please fire the ideas our way. David at ingoalmag.com. If you want more of this or less of that, or anything we should be doing, we'd love to hear, please.
Well,
Quite often we're in the dark.
Here's a suggestion for you.
Go for it.
I mean, I know a lot of the goalies and coaches and whatnot have come from I guess, more of the elite professional side of things. So in Europe and
Sure.
North America, hockey is obviously a global game for us.
Yeah.
It is in a whole lot of countries. There's a lot of quality coaches and goalies in Australia. So maybe that's something to perhaps consider. It
Yeah,
obviously
no, it is.
needs to suit the agenda as well. You know, with the content you're producing, it needs to suit your audience too.
For sure. No, we'd love to. And I think we feel an obligation to, serve the whole goaltending world. I think we're an incredible community of goaltenders, and we'd like to be involved everywhere. Truth be told, we're probably always sort of surviving week to week or month to month, and who's next, and maybe what's next is, I wish we had enough control of this whole thing that we could take the time to just figure out what the next step is. So, but stay in touch. And if somebody else out there is in touch with a great story of a goaltender or a coach who's outside our normal sort of purview, market, whatever
Yeah.
you want to say, please let me know. We'd love to meet them and love to have a conversation. I mean, one of the goals to InGoal when we started it, and I say when I mean when Kevin and I came together and it evolved, was really to recognize that we're incredibly privileged to
Mm.
be in the locker room, to be in the rink, to be at the camps, and I know what a thrill it was the first time I stood on the glass at an NHL practice, stood on a bench at a game day skate, got to take photos in an NHL rink. All those little moments were so thrilling. And one of our goals is to be able to take people with us for those experiences. That's really what Premium came from, because we had all those experiences in one format or the other, and we didn't really have a way of sharing them with people. And we wanted to do that. And I think we were reminded of that last week. We put together a little teaching tip with Sergei Bobrovsky, just a little bit of post work he was doing. And we wrestled with the piece that went with it. Is it the right thing he's doing here? Is he doing it the right way? Some coaches might want this. We get tied in knots, and we thought, you know what? People just want to see him working. Like, not many people get to stand on the glass and see this. And we put it out, and it got a bigger viewing on Instagram, I think, than almost anything we've ever put out. And so I think we need reminders that just giving people those opportunities to see and experience and be involved with, I think is really important. And I'm sure those things could come from other markets as well. If people just give us a tap on the shoulder and say, go talk to this person, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and I know, it sounds like you're very grateful for all those opportunities, and I think that's
Hugely.
crucial. And I mean, I know for me, like I'm grateful for having talked to you today. It's been fantastic.
Oh, well, me
And
too.
but thank you. But and it's also just, we need to be supporting each other and sharing this information, because not everyone may have access to it. I know for us, being all the way down here, anything to do with NHL is just a dream. Talking to people, seeing games, it's just, it's something we aspire to, like, oh, that would be fantastic if we had those opportunities. But anything that we do get, we are super grateful for. And I think that's why we need to just, we're all on the same path, really. Everyone wants to just reach their potential. So we should all be supporting each other in that.
100%. And everybody pretty much we've spoken to over the years has been like that. I mean, so many coaches and goaltenders have opened their doors to us, and we're very thankful too. And what a weird time we are in with COVID right now, but what a wonderful time in the sense that it's enabled some of these little communities online to, I think, to grow. And as I said to you when we first exchanged notes, I saw what you were doing online and bringing the world to Australia, and mentioned it to my wife literally the day you sent me a note. Hey, look what's going on here. It's some pretty cool stuff she's doing, and really impressive that you just
Oh, thank you.
sort of dove in both feet and making it happen. Yeah.
Well, everyone's got a lot of time in their hands these days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you just have to have the guts to just give it a go, right? Like, and sometimes good things happen.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Well, with anything, there's going to be criticism, but you've got to make yourself vulnerable, and there's people that are going to appreciate it. And the whole point of these interviews that we do is, if there's information, advice, anything that even one person can take away from it and benefit from, then it's worth it.
I agree. Every time we get a note from somebody just saying thanks for the content or love what you guys are doing, it makes the day easier. It really does.
Absolutely.
Because
Excellent.
I mean, you do get stuck working in a vacuum, don't you? When you're at home on the internet doing your thing. Is there anybody out there listening? I don't know. It's great to hear from people.
Yeah, you can see the number of views and whatnot, but how many of them actually stuck through all of it? But some of them do, and some of them listen right to the end, and hopefully they do on this one as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I love, especially when you get the notes. Oh, my son and I, my daughter and I, we listen to the podcast on the way to the rink all the time, and you're just like, oh, thank you. That's so cool.
Yeah, it makes it worthwhile. So on
Hmm.
that note, thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful chatting to you, and I
Oh,
really
thank
look
you,
forward
Sarah.
to seeing the further evolution of InGoal and what's to come.
Thank you, Sarah. Us too.